What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we're going to be continuing our look at the best Keyforge cards by counting down the top 10 cards from Sanctum. We've already had a look at Mars, Brobnar, and Untamed. I'll pop links to those ones in the description. Today it is time to have a little bit of a look at Sanctum, and weirdly enough, the Horsemen aren't on the list. Now, I did do a poll over on Facebook like I usually do. You can think that Horsemen not being on the list is a reaction or whatever. They didn't make the list. Comment section would be a very nice place to argue about it. Couple of honourable mentions. Epic Quest. Now, Epic Quest is an artifact that lets you forge an extra key. And you don't even have to pay for the key. How did it not make the top 10 list? Because you've got to have played 7 or more Sanctum cards this turn. Funny thing is, it's an Omni ability, so technically you could play this on a non-Sanctum turn, but how you played 7 Sanctum cards on a non-Sanctum turn, I'm not entirely sure. It's just too awkward to use. Now, you do get to archive each friendly knight creature in play when you play it. If you can build up an archive of Sanctum cards, maybe you can get it working. It's a phenomenal card, if you can get it working. Similarly, Glorious View, close but no cigar. It's an action card, and when you play it, you gain 1 ember for each creature your opponent controls more than you do. The reason it doesn't quite make the top 10 list, although it's a good card, not even as much argument that it's a good card, it's just a bit... well, there's going to be so many games where you don't play this. And if you have this in a deck which is very creature heavy, then you might be forced to play a bunch of creatures, and then it's no good. It's very situational. So I knocked it off the list. In at number 10, DUMA the Martyr. It's a free power, which is a little bit weak. But when destroyed, you fully heal each other friendly creature, and you draw 2 cards. Now, there's a very good chance your opponent's going to delay destroying it for as long as they can to not give you the advantage. But having said that, even if they don't destroy it, you can sit there and reap, or you can just attack other creatures and essentially self-destruct. We're going to see as we go through this list, Sanctum are very good at staying alive. Extra healing is very good. Drawing cards is good. Number 10 seems fair. In at number 9, we have Inspiration. Ready and use a friendly creature. Now, the language on this is extremely important in explaining why it's so good. First of all, it says use, so that means you can have an action, or fight, or reap. You can do whatever you like with it. And we can compare this to something like Anger, where you do get to ready a friendly creature, but your choice is fight. That's all you're allowed to do. And it is friendly creature, not friendly Sanctum creature, so this essentially lets you use a non-Sanctum creature on a Sanctum turn. This is very nice indeed. Could be extra reaping, could be extra fighting, could be a lovely action. It's so good when you get to use anything not of your active house, and Inspiration lets you do that. In at number 8, the Vaultkeeper. Your ember cannot be stolen. This is wonderful. Now, this is also quite a situational card, so it only comes in at number 8. And if you knocked it off the list for being too situational, I wouldn't be terribly upset. But if you take something like Shadows, for instance, they steal so much ember, and it's really annoying. Moon Cursor steals ember. Noddy the Thief steals ember. Dodger steals ember. It really is quite annoying, and just having Vaultkeeper out stops it happening. Now, your opponent's going to go after Vaultkeeper, and that's definitely going to happen, but at least for a while your ember is safe. And like so many of these Sanctum creatures, you do have some armor to go along with your 4 power. That's pretty good. Speaking of armor, in at number 7, Grey Monk. 3 power creature is, I'm going to be honest, a bit rubbish. No, armor's not great, but each friendly creature gets +1 armor. That is not just your Sanctum, ladies and gentlemen. That is all of them. Armor is surprisingly good in Keyforge. It's one of those things where until you play a couple of games, you don't realize quite how much of a difference it can make. It keeps your creatures alive for an extra turn, which means you can take 1 more creature out, or you can reap 1 more ember, which can make all the difference. And Grey Monk gives each of your friendly creatures +1 armor. It's a bit redonk. Plus, when you reap, you heal 2 damage from a creature. So Grey Monk could be giving you the armor you need to survive and then healing up. I love this. In at number 6, Cleansing Wave. It's an action card, and what it allows you to do is heal 1 damage from each creature and gain 1 ember for each creature healed in this way. And this is where Sanctum as a house is really starting to come together, because you've got the armor and things like Grey Monk to give you extra armor. You survive a little bit, but you survive while taking damage. If you've got 8 creatures out, all of which have a little bit of damage, Cleansing Wave can get you 8 extra ember. Now, it could get you none, which would suck, but it's one of those, if you can drop this at the right time, you can get a lot of ember. Now, it does say heal each creature, and it says gain 1 ember for each creature healed. So I believe, and do correct me in the comments if you think I'm wrong, but I'm fairly sure about this, you get to heal your opponent's creatures, but you get the ember for being the healer. It does say gain 1 ember for each creature healed, not the creature's controller. So you can gain a lot of ember with Cleansing Wave. It should be higher than 6, but then again it won't always work, which is why it comes in at number 6. In at number 5 we have Blinding Light, and our first ember bonus so far. Yay! Always nice to get a little bit of ember when you play a card. Choose a house. Stun each creature of that house. Stun is another one of those things that really becomes good when you play a couple of games with stunning. You see, when you stun a creature, you put a stun token on them, and that's on your turn when you play Blinding Light. And then on their turn, they can essentially use a creature to become unstunned. They don't get to reap, they don't get to fight, they don't get to use the action, they just get to unstun. But of course, let's say you stun all of your opponent's disc creatures, they have to take a disc turn just to unstun all of their creatures without actually doing anything, and then the next disc turn is when they actually get to use them. You basically get to waste an entire turn of theirs other than actions and artifacts, which is quite phenomenally good. Now, this could backfire, because you might have the same house as your opponent, so you could end up stunning your creatures as well, or you might end up discarding this because you don't want to risk stunning your creatures. It's another one of those risk-reward cards you've got to be very careful to play, but you can put your opponent back like 2 turns. That's amazing. In at number 4, Doorstep to Heaven. You get an ember bonus when you play it, which is lovely, but each player with 6 ember or more is reduced to 5 ember. Now, this is crucial because at the end of your opponent's turn, if they've got enough ember to forge a key, they have to announce check. At which point you drop Doorstep to Heaven, and then they don't have 6 ember, they have 5, and then they can't forge a key. This is nice to just take some of their ember away, of course, and if you can catch them with, say, 13, 14 ember after a huge turn, that will be hilarious. But what's really great about Doorstep to Heaven is it's an emergency no you're not kind of card. If your opponent's got 2 keys forged and announces check, you can drop Doorstep to Heaven to guarantee you get an extra turn. That's why this card is so gosh darn good. In at number 3, Numquid the Fair. 3 power, 0 armor creature, and when you play it, you essentially keep destroying enemy creatures till they've got the same amount or fewer than you. So if they've got 8 creatures and you've got 2, then you get to destroy 6 creatures. And you get the choice of which one to destroy. So you play it, destroy an enemy creature, oh, they've still got more than me. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Now, if you've got the same amount of creatures, then you have to stop. But again, it's a situational card, but this is a board clearing card. This isn't situational like Glorious Few, where you can gain a few ember if your opponent's got a bunch more than you. Although, interestingly enough, if you can play Glorious Few and then Numquid the Fair, that's hilarious. This isn't my opponent spent 3 or 4 turns building up a board full of creatures and I'm taking them all out in one go kind of card. If you can really take advantage of this at the right time, you can wipe their board essentially. It's redonk. And 1 and 2 seem a little bit underwhelming at first, but they really did put themselves apart as a clear number 1 and 2 in the poll, and they do deserve number 1 and 2 in the poll. So in at number 2, we've got Bulwark, which initially looks a bit meh. 4 power, 2 armour, but each of its neighbours gain +2 armour. Now I've got a deck which has got a couple of Bulwark and a couple of Grey Monk, and oh my goodness does it lead to tanking. It's ridiculous tanking, because if you've got 2 Bulwarks next to each other, they're basically 4 power, 4 armour, so you can go against a 4 power creature, destroy them, taking nothing in return. This gives you some serious beef in your creatures, and if you've got a couple of Bulwark, and they are common, so they do turn up as multiples in decks moderately often, then you can really build up quite a tanky series of creatures. And the reason I feel so confident putting it in at number 2 is if we look at some of these other creatures, Numquid the Fair. Well, it's a one-shot deal. You play it, it's great, but your opponent can recover from that. If we look at something like DUMA the Martyr, when it's destroyed, you get a really good effect, but that's then it. Whereas Bulwark sits there really helping all of your creatures for the rest of the game. And in at number 1, I'm afraid it's a little bit boring. It's Virtuous Works. You get free Ember. That's it. It is literally a card that has no effect and gives you a treble Ember bonus. The thing is, in Keyforge, you forge a key for 6 Ember. So if you can play this, and then you just have half the Ember you need to forge a key next turn. And it's a really kind of number 1 card. It's not very inspiring. It's not very, whoa! It just gives you free Ember. But that's halfway towards forging a key. To be blunt, there's a very good chance that after playing a Virtuous Works, you're going to be able to forge a key next turn. So you know what? Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a very uninspiring number 1, but it's a deserving number 1. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the top 10 cards from Sanctum. You know the deal at this stage. I would like to hear your Sanctum stories. Give me your own top 10 list. Tell me which of these you've got in decks. Tell me your stories involving these or other Sanctum cards. Go nuts, but please do remember the most important rule as always. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where I ramble about games, including Keyforge. But by far the most important thing as always is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross and you've been watching Wossy Plays.